What's up, everybody? I'm Scott,
And I'm Jason.
and you are listening to Liquid Carnage. It is the most wonderful time of the year, and I'm not talking about Christmas. I'm talking about college football, NFL football, all in full swing. We just finished up the first week of the NFL season, rolling into week two. Fantasy team's not so hot, but never happens in week one. You got to build it for the long haul. It's just a happy time of year for me.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I actually didn't watch. I watched the morning games, but the afternoon games I had a previous engagement, so I couldn't watch them. But I heard good things happen for our team, and there we go.
Well, let's clarify team. Your team is the Rams. My team are the Cardinals. My team lost. Your team shocked the Seahawks. But our team, the Cardinals, looked very good in losing. And when I say that, that means they looked better than we thought they were going to be. So hopefully, when they get a quarterback back, they will be competitive.
Okay, there we go. That sounds good.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds good.
I think so. But it was nice because we talked about it last week. This was Janice's first fantasy football season, so she had me set up our second TV. I bought the NFL ticket on YouTube, and they give you an option for a 4-pack of games. So but they don't let you pick the games. So it's 4 different games on one screen. So I put that on a TV next to our big TV, and I put the Cardinal game on the big one because obviously that's what we're going to watch. And she was so focused on that Vikings game in the corner against the Buccaneers because she drafted Kirk Cousins, damn it. And she wanted to see how Kirk was doing. And you would have thought she was a coach the way she was just carrying on the whole day. It was great.
Yeah, yeah. I got to admit, I was a little surprised because when she took Kirk Cousins so high up in the draft, I was a little skeptical. But
Yeah.
she made it work, man. That's all that's important.
Yeah, she has over the last couple days come to me and admitted, which she will never do publicly, that maybe she should have listened to some of the advice and tips I offered when it comes to fantasy, and that I wasn't really trying to tank her team. I was honestly trying to help, but hey, live and learn, man. Love is a battlefield, as they say.
I remember my first 3 years of fantasy football. I had taken second place, first place, first place. I adhered to a tried true strategy of, two running backs your first 2 picks, 3 running backs in your first 4 picks. That was my rule. I was the runner up champion. The fourth year, I know everything. I drafted the top three receivers. Oh, I'm going to win this thing. Within
That's
3 weeks, all of them were hurt and out for the season, and my
that's the
team was horrible.
that's the evolution of the game. I was thinking about this the other day when Yahoo first started in 2001 with their fantasy sports. I was living down in Tempe, going to ASU, and I was working for the Diamondbacks. And our ticket office had a fantasy football league. And I remember that draft very vividly because I was so excited. I got to draft Kurt Warner with my top pick because I was at the end of the first round.
Yeah.
And oh man,
Yep.
I mean, those were the days, man.
Yep.
Those were the days. And look how far we've come 21, 22 years later. I've got a couple trophies, got a couple championships, but life was so much easier back then, you know?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I find interesting, I mean, obviously from an administrative standpoint, I watch the numbers of the podcasts and, how many people listen to our podcasts. Every time this year comes around, this time of year comes around when we start talking about fantasy football, we always invariably get a couple states that just see fantasy football podcast and they just say, "Hey, let's listen." Like they're never going to listen again, but we always get a couple people that will listen to a fantasy football podcast. Like it's part of an attachment, an emotional attachment that people have that says, "Hey, I don't care where I'm getting the information. I'm going to listen and see what it says."
Well, I think a blind squirrel finds a nut every so often. And you've learned over the years, just like I have, sometimes with your picks, you get the right combination. You pick the right player at the right time, and they have a magical season. And other times, you pick LaDainian Tomlinson on his last year before he starts really falling off a cliff, and he's not worth the number 1 overall pick. But that happens every year.
Oh, David Johnson,
Yeah,
6 years ago,
yeah,
6 years ago maybe he
oh
was
yeah.
the number one running back. number one running back.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about one hit wonder, man.
Oh yeah, there was there's been a couple guys like that. There was a guy for the Texans years ago. His name escapes me right now, but he had a monster year, and I picked him in the first round the following year. Uh, Blew out his knee in the final preseason game back when they all actually played in the preseason. Never played again. Oh, I forget his
Oh,
name. I'll have to go look. But man, I spent good money on him in my money auction league draft and drafted him
oh,
high.
yeah,
I was all in, and I was in until I wasn't. You know.
yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
No? But that's the name of the game. I mean, it helps make the game more entertaining. It helps make the game fun. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. You learn matchups.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see Janice take so much interest in the matchups. So hopefully she has a good season. I play her week 3, so that's the battle of the house.
Okay. Is there
So
a side wager on that one?
we will find out here soon. I'm going
Okay.
to get through week 2, see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And then I'll start putting some side bets out there. I played the intern week 1, and I smoked him like a Philly blunt. So that's business as usual as far as I'm concerned. In any league I play him in. So I didn't make a bet because also you need him to, come through.
Agree. Yeah, you need him to agree to do it. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So, we'll see who I play week 2 and go from there.
Yeah, I had an interesting discussion kind of leading into one of the topics this week. I had an interesting discussion. I finished reading the book American Sniper. There was a movie made from
Chris
it, but
Kyle.
but I'd never read the book, and so one of my coworkers, said, "Oh, it's a really good book. You'd like it," and so I decided to read it, and the book was really good. Frankly, I felt like I was not expecting some of Chris Kyle's interpretation of life and his interpretation of what it means to be an American. I didn't think I was going to find it very in depth
Yeah.
or moving. But at the end of the book, I found that I was pleasantly surprised that there was a lot of depth. But one of the comments that I had made to her as we were discussing the book after is that I was kind of moved by the simplistic version of what is right and what is wrong that he and maybe a lot of people who served in the military look at life. It's basically God, country, family,
Yeah.
right? I mean that's as simple as it is. That I cherish God, I cherish my country, I cherish my family.
Yeah.
And I said, I was telling her I found that fascinating that his life was so simple. To me, life isn't that simple. And her response was kind of interesting to me because she said, well, I just don't understand anyone. I mean, you're not very patriotic if you don't support the United States when in times of war. And as most of you might know, some of you obviously know, I lean a little left politically, and I found myself saying, gosh, so if you question what your government does, then you're not patriotic, is what you're saying. That if you don't just go blindly with whatever the United States says, then you're not a patriot or you're not patriotic. And it kind of got me thinking even more so that we seem to draw very abstract black and white lines. You're either with us or you're against us.
Yeah.
And I've always found that I never liked people questioning my patriotism to the United States because I disagree with how they feel I should be patriotic.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about that because everyone, especially over the landscapes over the last 7-8 years, how patriotism is defined. Coincidentally, we're recording this on September 11th, and it's a Monday. And I had a conversation at work today in our safety huddle. It's like, man, do you remember September 12th, 2001? I have never felt more patriotic than I did September 12th, 2001. You know,
Yeah.
oh, the whole country was fired up, and it didn't matter if you were Republican or if you were a Democrat or if you were, gay or straight or whatever. It was like, fuck these guys. We're one. Let's go get them. And it's slowly chipped away since then, and now it's either you're left or you're right. And if you're not left and I believe left, or if you're right and I believe right, Your opinion is obviously wrong, and I'm right, and I think that's the problem we have in today's world.
I had a similar experience during the first Gulf War. I just started college in 1990 when the first Gulf War began. And I remember my friends and I were in our dorm room saying, hey, I think we need, we're going to need to sign up. I mean, we're going to war, we're going to have to sign up. And within 3 weeks, that war was over.
Yeah.
And so the ideal or the idea was gone. Like that we didn't
Yeah.
have to worry about going to war because our army was sufficiently engaged enough that we didn't have to fight.
But
And
that was then. That was
yeah,
that was the 90s.
that was in that,
Today's
like
world is very
1990,
much different.
1991 is the very first Gulf War. Like I said, we were done in like 3 weeks. I mean, we totally annihilated the Iraqi army. And the war was completely over by that time. And so there was no need to sign up for a draft or and I too was feeling very patriotic that I'm going to serve my country. I'm going to do the right thing because that is the thing you do, right? If you love your
Yeah.
country and they call you to go to war, you go to
Go to
war.
war.
Period.
Yeah.
And I feel that I guess my response to when I was talking to her, I said, I totally agree with you that you should support the troops. You should support the army as a entity that they're defending us, that we need them, and we should be thankful that men and women are willing to sacrifice their lives for us all. I can't go so far to blindly just agree with the policies of the government officials who utilize our military to do things if I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But that's part of the freedoms that the army is supposed to defend when they're fighting overseas or fighting other people is you're defending freedom. That freedom also has to include a dissent of what you agree with.
Yeah, but so many people today have gone to the thinking of, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. If you're getting your information from someone else, that's clearly fake news. If you don't see the world the way I see it, um, I don't appreciate the way you see it because it's not the same as me, and I think you're wrong. It's a problem. It's people have been allowed to not verify the facts or even be able to trust the facts they get from the news anymore. So they become uneducated parrots that need to be punched in the mouth sometimes.
I, I look at that. There's a huge amount of people in the United States that think that January 6th was a patriotic protection of our freedoms.
Yeah,
I mean,
that blows me
there's
away.
there's a large group of people in this country that feel like that needed to happen, and if you were against the storming of the Capitol on January 6th, you are not patriotic.
And it's crazy to me because we'll just take that as an example. The amount of people that have been identified and arrested, tried, prosecuted, convicted, the numbers are crazy. And they've gone on record, a lot of them gone on record saying, I got caught up in the moment and I now realize that I was wrong. I was misled and I was lied to. Um, but so many people still think, no, that was right. And, you know, President Trump is still the president. And I was like, that's not what's going on here. But I guess it's cool you can think that as long as you live in the middle of the forest and don't talk to anybody else. But over here in reality,
What are your
that's not the
thoughts?
case.
Yeah, what are your thoughts when you hear that someone burns the American flag?
I don't like it. I'm an Eagle Scout. I was raised the right way. You respect the flag, you respect your country. I don't like a lot of things our politicians do on either side of the aisle. I don't believe there's such thing as an honest politician anymore. But you have to almost figure out which is the lesser of the two evils. You know. So when I see someone burning an American flag, unless it's being burned the proper way, I just think they're ignorant.
So it definitely makes you question their patriotism, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
guess so. Yeah.
and I mean, and I feel the same way about when I see a football player kneel for the national anthem.
Yeah.
Makes you
See,
question their patriotism, which is, I guess, maybe that's part of the definition of patriotism is belief in something greater than yourself and
and
loyalty to
that's
your
an
country.
argument I've gotten into with many people about the kneeling in the football because patriotism is fighting for your rights. If our First Amendment is the freedom of speech, the freedom of peaceful protest, and that's a peaceful protest, why are you so offended by the way I'm peacefully protesting? Because you don't agree with it?
Oh,
Well, then,
I think it's more of the same reason why you don't like it when you see someone burn a flag. There's an emotional attachment to what's happening that supersedes the objective. I'm looking at an act of civil disobedience or
that's probably more
non-patriotism.
social disobedience than.
Right. So, I
See,
mean, but
I
you're
guess
looking at it I'm sure the people that see someone kneel are taking an emotional attachment to that act, not as an objective display of freedom, but an emotional attack on themselves. They become so attached emotionally to football and the American flag and the national anthem that you're actually going after them, not the act
well, you
itself.
see, I think the act myself, I understand completely. I am all for peaceful protests because you look at the amount of protests we had 3 years ago during the pandemic, where there's a lockdown in Arizona and a curfew and all that. I mean, what's the value in rioting and breaking windows and doing all that shit when, okay, some football players kneeled to bring awareness. Didn't hurt anybody. It was peaceful. It's well within the First Amendment rights, and it evoked an emotion and they got demonized because some people view patriotism very black and white and others view it with shades of gray. Now, you can't compare kneeling in a football game to burning the flag because I think they're two very different actions with two very different reasons.
Really interesting. Explain that because I'm finding a trouble distinguishing between the two actions.
I don't see burning a flag as an act of peaceful protest. I see, well, one, that's illegal
It's illegal to burn a flag.
if you don't burn it the proper way.
Oh, I didn't know there was a law against burning a flag.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, you don't burn flags. You don't let them touch the ground.
No, those aren't
There's
laws. Those are rights or courtesies to the flag, but those aren't laws, are they?
I think
A
the
law
burning of
to
the
me is
flag.
like the Arizona statutes say you touch the flag to the ground or you burn a flag or you hang it upside down. There's a legal consequence to that versus the protocol of how you handle a flag. It's not you shouldn't let it touch the ground. I totally get that. And maybe there are rules with regard to laws, but to burn a flag is not
All right.
against the
So
law.
I just googled it. I stand corrected. It is not illegal. It's protected under the First Amendment.
Amendment, right? Okay, then
It's
okay,
frowned upon. But
but still,
I
you
think
do differentiate. There's a difference between burning of the flag versus kneeling for the national anthem or flag, right?
yeah, because I think you're doing each for two very different reasons too. And I think part of the biggest problem we have is the kneeling with the kneeling with the national anthem was about bringing social awareness about race and equity in our country. And I think that evokes an emotional response to people because they don't want to admit that there really is a problem that's bigger than the world they live in their little bubbles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, go ahead.
They don't want to see the bigger problem uh, nationwide versus what they have going on in their communities.
Okay.
They don't necessarily think. But when you burn the American flag, that's a little bit more divisive. I think that's more of a slap in the face than it is a peaceful protest, in my opinion.
It's like when people say, love it or leave it. If you don't
Yeah,
love it, then you can leave anytime you want.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm sure you can tell that I don't see a differentiation because um, they're both both acts are attacking an emotional connection that someone has to the United States, um, and both of them are an attack against the representation that means to each one of us. That's why some people don't have an issue with the burning of a flag as anything more than a political protest versus love it or leave it. I mean, how many people did we know that stopped watching football because people wouldn't, or
Oh yeah.
the one person's act made them stop watching football altogether.
Now, let's be clear on that. The majority of those people went running right back to it the minute it stopped. I mean, they're huffing and puffing on it and how bad it was to them and disrespectful. Disappeared immediately once they heard this player stop doing it. So to me, that's not standing on your laurels. That is you having a temper tantrum because you don't like the way somebody's peacefully protesting. If you really truly hated it and you really truly were offended that someone would be able to take a stand like that on that level of national attention, and it hurts your feelings that much you don't want to watch it, don't ever turn it on again. Because the minute you start watching football, you become a hypocrite in my book.
Interesting. So,
Oh
and
yeah.
what is the burning of the flag, the violence of burning of the flag that's different from kneeling?
It's more of an act of defiance because the flag stands for the country as a whole, and I just think there's a big difference. I mean, you can claim it's a peaceful protest because you're burning the flag, but we all stand under that flag. And just like some people can argue, we stand for the national anthem, but nothing's being destroyed when you're kneeling peacefully. Nothing's being disrespected on a physical level
Sure. Okay.
when you're kneeling versus when you're burning a flag. And I'll be honest, had Colin Kaepernick gone out there and burned a flag during the national anthem, you know what, fuck that guy. And had they made that a thing, they would have killed the game. It would have killed a lot of people out of anger. But you have to seek to understand the why. And I don't think you can't, in my book, you can't compare burning a flag to kneeling during the national anthem because the context we're talking about kneeling in the national anthem in football had context. It has meaning. When you talk about burning an American flag, what's the context for it? Are they doing it to be assholes? Are they doing it because they're anti-American? Like, what's the logic behind it? That's why I'm having a hard time quantifying the difference because I know the reasoning and understand the reasoning behind the kneeling. But when you say, okay, when someone's burning a flag, I say it's disrespectful because it's you burning a flag in general, but there should be more context as to the why.
If they burned the British flag, would it mean anything to you?
I think any country's flag, to be honest with you.
So, for example, when you see the people from the Middle East burn the American flag, um, it evokes a different emotion, right? It's like an anger
Yeah,
emotion to it. Like who,
yeah,
but obviously we're probably more volatile against that group of people that would burn an American flag than one of our own burning American flag. Maybe that's the
yeah.
emotional connection that you're drawing is that, it's kind of like, when one of your own backstabs your family, you get
Yeah,
a bad taste in your mouth. Like the emotion of loyalty means something over any of the protests that you might have.
it's the betrayal you didn't see coming
Good. Yeah.
that evokes the emotion. Like I said, it all comes down to seeking to understand. And if you truly want to be a patriot in my book, if you truly want to say you're an American and you support the freedom of speech, it just can't be your speech. It just can't be what you believe in. Everybody here in this country has a right to believe what they want. As weird as it might be, as divisive as it might be, just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean they can't do it and it's not wrong.
So yeah. So I mean, if then are you? I guess my final question on this topic then is it more patriotic not to speak your mind in dissent?
I think there's a time and place for everything. I I am not going to walk into a lion's den of fired up people and start, you know, speaking my truth on it. I if people are going to be mad, they're going to be mad. And if I give my opinion on that particular subject and they don't agree with it, it's not going to solve anything except cause a bigger fight. I don't want to do that. I got bigger shit to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this topic has kind of made me like aware of that I need to research more is the same people who would get pissed if someone burned the flag had no problem destroying another symbol of our country, which is the U.S. Capitol. They had no problem. What's the difference between you breaking windows in the symbol of our government or burning a flag? They would tell you there's a total difference. I would argue there is no difference. It's a symbol, something that we are supposed to take pride in, something that we're supposed to value if we're real patriotic. And they had no problem desecrating the Capitol, but get pissed when someone burns a flag or kneels for a football game.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting to me that what patriotism means is more of an emotional connection, not necessarily this is patriotic and this isn't.
Yeah. And to me, there's 8 billion people in this world, which means there's 8 billion different viewpoints on patriotism. For whatever country you belong to. I mean, there obviously patriotism is for your homeland. Um, Everyone's going to view it a little bit differently. Even if it's the same, I guarantee when you get down to it, there's even a fractional belief that's different than the person next to you. And they're like snowflakes. Everyone's different. And you just have to accept it. And sometimes it's better to keep your mouth shut and thought a fool than to open it up and remove all doubt.
And for some people, they might say the exact opposite. Those who don't say anything are letting evil come.
Yeah, and to an extent, I can agree with that. But I guess to also an extent, it's like, you're not going to argue with stupid. You shouldn't argue with stupid because those people that are so hell bent on it, you're not going to change their minds.
Right.
So if you're not going to change their minds, don't waste your breath, don't waste your time. It's better to think globally and act locally at that point. Just control what you can and move forward.
And maybe the key is too is, maybe it's hard to differentiate an ideology such as the United States to a United States citizen in terms
Yeah,
of what offends us, what doesn't offend us. And so to be able to license, what it means to be patriotic, like you said, everyone has a different opinion of that. And so we can't simply pigeonhole into it as you burn an American flag, you're not patriotic, but you destroy the Capitol, you are patriotic. It's,
you know,
it's a
I
subjective opinion.
and
And
it is. And I know you don't have social media, but how many? And this is a generational thing, but I can't tell how many of the older generation I see that'll post. If you don't reshare this, you're not patriotic. It'd be some bullshit, depending on which thing you believe in. It's like,
right.
man. So if I don't repost this, you're gonna say I'm like, I don't want to hear that noise. Like, go away. Stop.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think that coming back full circle now, that was the one thing I was like, how do I answer this girl because she obviously thinks that people who dissent against the military are not patriotic, and I think you can differentiate between patriotism and a government that is not doing the up and up to deserve that patriotic loyalty.
Yeah. And I am all for the military, but I also believe that when you ask for volunteers to sign up, you get what you pay for. So you can't get mad when you have some of these fools that go in there and they're complete morons and they do what they do and they take away from all the other good that the military does.
Well, even if let's assume we had the best of the best, misusing the military in places we shouldn't be using our military, I can support the military 100% and the best and the brightest are in the military and yet be defiant against why we're utilizing them in a way that doesn't represent the best of what it means to be an American
No, yeah,
citizen.
I agree 100%.
But until we get away from the ideology and look at it from a humanitarian perspective to say, what it means to be patriotic, sometimes is going to be in disagreement with each other. Doesn't mean that you're
Yeah.
not patriotic or are. It's not a black and white. It's subjective.
But that in and itself is patriotic because you both have your your freedom of speech and your rights to disagree and have a peaceful conversation about it in theory.
And in final retrospect, how many people come to the United States and say, I'd rather be in the United States dealing with your shit than back where I was from dealing with that shit?
Exactly.
Okay, I can deal with that. I'll take my problems and say, hey, we still have one of the greatest places to live on the planet. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's America, baby. Love it or
that's
leave
right,
it.
baby. Love it or love it or
Yeah,
love it.
that's it. You can love it or love it. You got two options.
You can
Love
love
it or
it or
love it
love it.
more.
That's right.
As we wrap up today's show, how was your fantasy football first week? Did you win? Did you get blown out? Did the players you drafted high actually show up and produce? We want to hear about it. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and the Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage. Do you have a fun place in the Denver metro area where the EP can watch football with you? Hit him up on liquid_EP on Twitter and the Instagram.
Yeah, well, good luck next week, man. I hope you have a good next week as well, my friend.
Yeah, well, unless I'm playing you, I've got to look. Then we'll debate. We'll see how it goes. But I know I've got you in the next couple weeks in one of our leagues together, so we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, that sounds good.
Yeah. All right, my friend. With that being said, take us home.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We always appreciate you. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know